Hey guys, welcome back. We are now going to start with page 3, number 7. A line passes through the points -3, -1, and 6, -4. Write an equation of the line, show your work. We haven't seen anything like this before, so I'm going to take you through this step by step. And I'm actually going to do this one, so this is one you can just copy and use as a reference for the other ones later. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite these points. In order to write the equation of a line, we first need to find the slope, which we do know how to do. So I'm going to label these points x1, y1, x2, y2. So remember, this is my first point, and this is my second point. And so then we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw that fraction bar. We're going to start with our first y. We're going to put that over our first x. Then remember, we do our minus, minus. Then we go ahead and put our second y, which is a -4, and our second x, which is a 6. So we've encountered this kind of scenario before. We have minus a negative here. So remember, this minus a negative is going to turn into a plus. Just these two right next to each other. So -1 plus 4 is what we write from this to this. Then I have a -3 minus 6. So think about losing $3 and then losing $6 more. You've lost $9 in total. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to evaluate -1 plus 4. Another way you can read this as 4 minus 1, which we all know is 3. Whenever we get to this point, we always want to look to reduce this if possible. So 3 divided by -9. So both of these are divisible by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. -9 divided by 3 is -3. So now we have our m. This is our slope. So that's the first part that we need. So in order to be able to write the equation of a line, we need to take our slope and we need to put it in the equation y equals mx plus b. So the only part of this equation that we don't have is we now have our m, we don't have our b. So we need to figure out how to do this. So one method to do this is I'm going to take one point and I'm going to use an x and a y, and I'm going to plug that in for this x and this y, and I'm going to plug it in for m. So if I plug in for y, I plug in for m, and I plug in for x, what's the only letter that's left? B. So then I can actually solve this for b. So let's take our first point, -3. We're going to put that in place of the x. So we're going to go ahead and put that in a parenthesis. Okay. I'm going to take my slope, which is -1/3. I'm going to put that in place of my m. Then I'm going to find my y, which is -1. I'm going to replace the y. So I replaced my y with this number, I replaced my m with our slope that we found, and I replaced my x with the first x. So you can only use one point for this, okay? And then I now have my plus b. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate this part here. So this is always what you want to evaluate first. So I'll bring down my -1. So a negative times a negative times becomes a positive. So now I know that both those negatives are gone. And then 1/3 of 3 is simply just 1. So now I have this equation, b plus 1 equals -1. So remember, when we're doing an equation, working an equation, if we have a +1, and if I want to remove that from this side, so if I remove the one from this side, well, in order to keep the equation balanced, it's like pulling a weight. If I pull a weight off one side, the scale is going to tip. So in order to keep the scale balanced, I have to pull it off both sides. So this cancels that out, which is what we want, right? We want just the b by itself. So now I have a b on the right-hand side, so I'm going to get b equals, which is great, because that's what I need. I need b for this equation. And then I lose 1, and then I lose 1 more. So think about if I lost $1, then I lost another $1. Well, we've lost $2. So this is great, because now I have a b and I have an m. And so I can use both of those and plug into y equals mx plus b. And so my equation is going to have an x and it's going to have a y in there. what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in for my b and my m. So I'm going to take this equation, and I'm going to take that m value, which we calculated before, which was negative 1/3. I'm going to replace it. So now the m is replaced with negative 1/3. Then I'm going to take my b value, which was negative 2, and I'm going to go ahead and put in minus 2. And so now we have an equation. So let's recap this real quick so I know that you understand, because this is a long video and a long process. So the first thing is I labeled my points. I found my slope. I reduced my slope. I took my equation y equals mx plus b. I now know my m. I took my first point. I plugged in y for y, x for x, and then I went ahead and I solved this for b. And once I had my m and my b, I was able to plug that into my equation. We are now ready to deal with 7b. What is the equation of the line that is shifted 4 units down? So first, I'm going to transfer the equation that we just created from 7a, which is y equals negative 1/3 x minus 2. So that's the equation we just created from the previous answer 7a. So in order to understand how to shift something 4 units down, we're going to do a little graph here. So I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to graph this line. So let me create a graph here. And this is going to help you for graphing and other problems if you forgot. So the first thing we always want to do is we want to take a look at this number, which is my negative 2. Okay, that's my y-intercept. So remember, we have a y-axis and an x-axis. So I'm going to plot my negative 2 on my y-axis. So here is negative 2 on my y-axis. Okay, so there's the first thing I want to plot. So now, I then would graph my slope. So based off of this point, I'm going to do this slope, right? And remember, this is a negative slope, so our little man should be walking downhill. So I'm thinking this is going to trend like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down 1, and I'm going to go to the right 3, because that's my rise and my run, right? Here's my rise of 1, here's my run of 3, and I can keep repeating that, down 1, right 3. So there's another point I can plot. Now, if I were to continue this line straight, I can't go down 1 and here, right? Because then I would make a line that looks like this. So I want to follow, so I'm going to go up 1 and then to the left 3. I'm going to go up more and then to the left 3. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this. So now we have graphed this line, just like so. There's my y-intercept, and any of these points will give me my slope, right? I have a negative slope, my little man's walking downhill. There's my down 1 and right 3. So now let's go back to what the question, how do I shift this 4 units down? So if I want to shift the line 4 units down, well, I would take this point and I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I'd take this point and go 1, 2, 3, 4. I take this point and go 1, 2, 3, 4. I take this point and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Take this point and go 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is my new line. So now let's take a look at this new line. This line is gonna answer our question for us. Well, look at our slope real quick, right? Our slope is identical, so we can go ahead and we can write y equals negative 1/3 x, because that's my slope, right? There's my m. This is my m. The m hasn't changed, right? These two lines are parallel. They're never going to intersect because they have the exact same slope. I just shifted it down. Now what we need is we need our b, right? We have mx plus b for your normal equation. Well, what's my new b? Well, let's count, right? This was at negative 2, so that'd be negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So there's my new equation shifted down 4. So look at my original equation. That was at a negative 2. Then I went to a negative 6. My slopes didn't change. So what did I essentially do? Well, I just went down 4 from this number, and that shifts it down 4. Page 3, number 8. A line passes through the origin and a point negative 3, 4. What is the equation of the line? Show your work and explain your reasoning. So whenever it says explain, math is the explanation. Okay, so if your math is correct, that's going to be great. So the first thing is we need to remember what the origin is, right? Well, the origin is the point 0, 0. So there's your first point. Now, I just went over how to do this whole process, so I'm going to do it again, quicker, and I'm not going to use this point, and you're going to use this point, and it's going to help you do this problem. Okay, so I'm going to do a different one, and you can watch and apply to this one. So let's use some similar type scenarios. I'll do a negative first. So let's make this -2, and then that's positive. So I'm going to do a +5. Okay, so now first thing we need to do is we need to label x1, y1, x2, y2. Then I'm going to draw my fraction bar and bring down my first y, which is 0, my first x, which is 0, put my minus in my minus. I'm going to bring down my second y, which is 5. Bring down my second x, which is -2. So we notice that 0 minus 5, that's going to give us a -5. We also notice that we have this minus a negative again, so we're going to rewrite that as 0 plus 2. And so we can simplify this to be -5/2. So now we have our m. And that's perfect, because we want to get to y equals mx plus b. So now we have m. So the next thing, remember, we talked about is you are going to plug in your x and your y for your x and your y. So look, we have y0. We know m is -5/2. We also know our x is 0. So let's plug that in. Plus b. So once again, we're going to solve for b. So, well, what's 0 times anything? Well, we get 0 equals 0 plus b, right? Well, what does b have to be? Well, I don't even need to subtract 0 from both sides, right? This just goes away. So we get b equals 0. Well, if we take our equation, y equals mx plus b, and we know b is 0, this is simply going to become y equals, let's plug in our m, which is right here, -5/2x. And then we could put plus 0, but you don't have to. So you can either leave it like this, or you can put plus 0 if that makes more sense to you. But there's your equation. And so what's going to happen is you're going to get a similar type of scenario when you go back and you look at this problem. Okay, so yours should also go and have no plus b, because that's also through the origin. Number 9. What is the equation of a line that passes through 0, 3, and -5, 3? Show your work and explain your reasoning. Okay, so I want you to notice something real quick. What do you notice about this number and this number? They are the same. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Let's imagine for a second I give you these points. 2, 4, 2, 7. What do you notice about these two? So if this is x, this is y, this is x, this is y. What do you notice about these two? What's the same? Well, this x is 2 and this x is 2. It doesn't even matter what these are. As long as they are different, I know that x equals 2. That is my answer. So whenever both your x's are the same, x equals 2. So let's do another one. Let's imagine now that I'm at 0 and 7, and then 3 and 7. Let's label this again, x, y, x, y. Well, what do you notice now? Both of my y's are 7. So it doesn't even matter what the x's are. I don't need to find the slope. This is a straight line where y equals 7. And if you were to graph that, you would get a straight line going across. So this line is a horizontal line like this. This line is a vertical line where every x value is 2. So these are special cases, okay? So these are special cases where if you notice, you know, that 2 of your letters are the same. So I want you to look at this one and think about this 3, whether it's x or y, and then you can easily answer that question.